In the 1950s, on the outskirts of the Californian desert, Victory, a perfectly manicured company town where families seem to have it all. Each dawn, the men march off to the mysterious Victory headquarters beyond the town limits, while their wives remain at home, tending spotless houses and dutifully rehearsing ballet with their instructor, Shelley. Yet these women live under strict orders, never question their husbands' daily activities, and absolutely no visits to the enigmatic headquarters are permitted. Take Alice and Jack, one sizzling duo with a very active, intimate life and a flair for hosting wild backyard bashes. They mesmerize their neighbors, especially Alice's best friend Bunny and her husband, with endless laughter and late-night gossip. Alice can't resist humming their secret favorite song whenever she's dusting shelves or folding laundry. But just then, the earth rumbles for a few seconds. Could it be Victory's hush-hush projects at headquarters? Alice peers at Jack for an answer, but he shuts down, and she brushes off the mystery, for now. One sunny afternoon after ballet practice, Bunny and Alice spy a squad of men in bright red jumpsuits helping a brand new neighbor haul boxes. They can't resist whispering juicy rumors about their pal Margaret skipping class. No shock there, since Margaret's been branded the town's eerie outcast after that cryptic mishap. Later, Alice is pruning roses in her garden when she glimpses Margaret materialize in her own backyard, clutching a toy plane, eyes sealed shut as if haunted by glowing orbs lurking in the dark. Baffled, Alice just shrugs and trudges on. While preparing dinner on a sweltering afternoon, Alice stares dumbfounded at her empty egg carton, every shell completely hollow and useless. She tosses her mind aside when smoke begins billowing from the oven as her meal scorches away. Days later, at a sun-drenched pool party at Shelley's lavish mansion, Alice hums that same elusive tune until Bunny snaps, "Stop that song already." Alice startles. She has no clue what it's called, only that the melody loops endlessly in her mind. Suddenly, fragments of strange images flash before her eyes, but a splash from Bunny yanks her back to reality. Just then, Shelley and her husband Frank, the powerful Victory CEO, silence the festivities to deliver a grand welcome for the latest arrivals in town. The speech screeches to a halt when Margaret storms forward, demanding why they're here when they shouldn't be. Her husband drags her away, leaving the gathering tense and uneasy. So Frank swoops back in to assure everyone that they're transforming the world by crafting a haven built on safety and strict order. Still unsettled, Alice slips away later to track down Margaret, stumbling on her inside Margaret's dim living room. There, her husband fusses over her with a spoonful of murky medicine, insisting she take it. Margaret pleads with Alice, "I'm not okay. I've been having terrible nightmares, and they're hiding me here." But her husband slams the door shut, cutting Alice off from the truth. Back at the party, Alice strolls into Frank's private quarters, and there's Jack, fussing with Frank's tie. Her heart races as Jack suddenly grows bold, pressing close and getting frisky on the spot. Just as their whispers heat up, Frank appears, his gaze locked on them with a chilling intensity. Then he vanishes without a word, leaving Alice stunned and silent. The next morning, Alice and her friends browse the local shops when someone brings up Margaret's odd behavior since the accident. A hush falls over the group until Bunny snaps, "It wasn't an accident," and everyone shivers at the unsaid truth. Margaret shattering the one ironclad rule, venturing into the vast desert with her child after glimpsing something sinister, perhaps a flicker of madness. When the search party found her, she stood alone, clutching her son's tiny toy plane. Her child had vanished without a trace. Margaret swears, "They took him away from me as punishment." The gathering barely blinks when another tremor ripples through the ground. They're numb to these shudders by now. One curious wife murmurs, "Are the whispers about secret weapons tests real?" But Bunny snaps, "Our only mission is to support our husbands. No questions allowed." Later that night, Alice is haunted by wildly surreal dreams, their images looping in her mind well into dawn. Craving space, she hops the trolley past the mall, wanting to lose herself in the desert's silent beauty, its endless dunes bathed in early light, puzzling the driver to silence. Then, like a ghost from Margaret's story, a small plane descends in the sky, twisting and tumbling until it crashes into the sands below. Alice gasps, frozen on the trolley as dust billows around the wreckage. There had never been a plane overhead before. Alice's heart pounds as she insists on investigating. Convinced someone might need rescuing, the trolley driver snarls that it's forbidden and slams the door. So Alice defiantly marches deeper into the desert, her boots sinking into hot dunes under the scorching sun. Hours pass until she spots a lonely hill encircled by a twisting spiral road, and she forces herself upward, breath ragged, until she stands before a mysterious glass dome. She pounds on its surface, "Hello?" begging for a response, but only her echo answers. Terrified yet driven by curiosity, Alice draws closer and hesitantly places both hands on the dome's smooth walls. Immediately her body convulses, her head snaps back, and a torrent of grotesque visions floods her mind as Frank's voice murmurs about escaping chaos behind this safe facade. Alice blinks, and suddenly she's back in her own bed at home, confused and trembling. She stumbles into the kitchen to find Jack elbow-deep in scrambled eggs, insisting he cooked so he wouldn't wake her. It seems Alice somehow returned before Jack got in, but she has zero memory of the journey. When Alice hesitantly mentions the plane crash, Jack frowns and replies, "There hasn't been any crash. Otherwise everyone in town would be talking about it." His calm denial sends a chill through her as he brushes it off, as a bad dream, and distracts her with gentle touches and cooking jokes. The very next morning, Alice is wiping the kitchen windows when the wall behind her bulges outward, pinning her palm to the glass. Heart hammering, she pushes back, and in a blink, the wall snaps back into place, revealing it was only another terrifying hallucination. At that precise moment, the phone rings, and Alice answers to hear Margaret's shaky voice. "Did you see it?" Margaret warns. "They're lying to us. We have to leave now." Alice's heart clenches. She manages to whisper, "I'm not crazy," before slamming down the receiver. The memory of that chilling phone call haunts Alice, and during her very next ballet lesson, she catches her reflection in the mirror and gasps. It's Margaret's face staring back at her. At first, the ghostly image mimics Alice's every ply and arabesque, but in an instant, Margaret slams her hands against the glass and pounds her head over and over. Alice shrieks in terror. No one else seems to notice. When Alice whirls around, the eerie doppelganger has vanished. Heart hammering, Alice rushes home only to find Margaret perched atop her roof like a silent sentinel. Through tears, Alice screams, "Stop this now!" But Margaret simply stares and walks away into the dusk. Panicked, Alice bolts after her but barely moves when the ominous men in red emerge and forcibly drag her back inside. That evening, Alice tries to confide in Jack about the horror, but he shakes his head, saying, "Margaret's fine. Her husband's with her at the hospital. It was just an accident while she cleaned the window." Alice's plea to believe her dies on her lips as Jack offers only gentle reassurance. Alice seethes as she's treated like a lunatic and demands the real story, grilling Jack about his secret job and what the company is hiding. He finally loses it, roaring that her prying could destroy the idyllic life they've built, and storms off, leaving her alone and shaken. Later, unable to sleep, Alice flips on the TV, but the flickering screen conjures a new nightmare. She's drowning in a deep pool, muscles thrashing as water closes over her head, mirroring the terror of the wall hallucination. She blinks and snaps upright against the window as if she tried to escape once more. The next morning, Alice wraps last night's dinner in cling film, but her hands slither on their own, encasing part of her arm before she jerks awake, ripping away the sticky wrap and gasping for air as visceral panic peaks, and she realizes she's slipping into madness. Shortly after, Jack arrives with Dr. Collins for a checkup, and Alice steels herself mentally for the battle ahead. Dr. Collins waves off Alice's concerns, chalking up her visions to stress from the shock of Margaret's fall. When Alice tries to spill the real story, he insists the mind can warp reality when grief overwhelms it. He even fishes out a prescription, but Jack and Alice both refuse the pills, swearing she doesn't need any. In that tense moment, Alice spots a stack of files in Collins's briefcase stamped "Classified," and her heart skips. She demands to know what happened to Margaret. With a heavy sigh, Collins reveals the grim truth. Margaret's violent outbursts and paranoia made her husband's work impossible. He was fired from Victory, and Margaret was spirited away to an undisclosed facility to recover. Alice's blood runs cold as she realizes how deep the cover-up goes. After Collins and Jack stride out, Collins accidentally abandons his briefcase in the hallway. No sooner do their footsteps fade than Alice pounces on the case, flipping it open in a frantic search for clues, until Collins suddenly reappears, sheepishly claiming it was his own. Alice feigns handing it back, and miraculously, he buys her story. Once Collins finally departs for good, Alice peeks inside. She's swiped Margaret's secret files, but every page is ink-blacked and unreadable. Frustrated by the useless pages, Margaret shoves them into the roaring fireplace, nursing a glass of whiskey to drown her guilt as the flames lick the paper. Later, while sinking into a hot bath, Alice's mind drifts again into those grotesque visions. Yet amid the horror, she suddenly glimpses tender moments of a couple holding each other. A sudden chord on the stereo snaps Alice back to reality. Jack's home and spinning a soft tune. Still rattled, she barely registers when Jack, out of the blue, asks, "Should we have a baby?" Alice blinks, heart pounding, and stammers, I'll think about it." That evening, they arrive at Frank's opulent restaurant gala. Glasses clink as Frank stands beside Dr. Collins in a shadowed corner, eyes never leaving Alice. The tension coils inside her until a sultry dancer glides in, her performance mirroring Alice's haunting visions and unraveling every fragile nerve. Tears spill down Alice's cheeks as she whispers to Jack, "Take me home," but he's frozen, riveted by Frank's looming announcement. Suddenly, Frank summons Jack onto the stage and declares him promoted to a higher post at Victory. Wild cheers erupt across the room, but the applause rings hollow in Alice's ears. Her chest tightens and she bolts for the ladies' room, where the vision of that embracing couple floods her eyes again. Bunny appears at the door, concern etched on her face. Alice pours out her terror, but Bunny's eyes flash with anger as she snaps, "Stop this madness and follow the rules," leaving Alice trembling in the empty restroom. Bunny scolds Alice for acting like a petulant child and threatening to ruin Jack's big night, insisting she pull herself together and be a good wife at once. Left with no choice, Alice forces herself back into the familiar routine, stuffing down every doubt and every terrifying image. A few days later, Jack throws a lavish dinner party at their home, with Frank and Shelley among the guests. While Alice hustles in the kitchen, Frank steps up beside her and murmurs, "You fascinate me," explaining that history's true titans emerge only when challenged, and he hopes Alice will keep pushing him to greatness. As dinner begins, Alice deliberately claims the head of the table to gaze straight at Frank while they eat. When polite chatter kicks off, she plunges in, asking each neighbor about life before Victory and pointing out that they all share the same recycled backstories. "Remember these tales," she snaps, "because they want us to forget the real ones, like what happened to Margaret." Jack moves to hush her, but Frank grins and urges her on. So Alice unleashes a blistering rant. She recounts every hallucination, every tremor, and accuses Frank of spinning lies to craft his sick, perfect little world. Frank's face remains a mask as he calmly declares, "Alice is suffering from the same psychosis that claimed Margaret," even charging her with intruding into his private chambers. The room goes deathly quiet as Alice reels from his betrayal. A heavy silence falls over the room. Shelley suddenly snaps, berating Alice for ruining her husband's big night before storming off in disgust. One by one, the other guests file out. Jack hurries to open the door, while Frank lingers to tell Alice he expected more from her. Then he, too, departs, leaving her seething with rage. Moments later, Jack returns and accuses her of sabotaging his celebration. Alice storms forward, voice trembling, "That's not it. Our life together matters more than Victory. We have to leave before this place destroys us." After what feels like an eternity of pleading, Jack finally nods. He'll run away with her. Alice wastes no time, snatches a small bag, and stuffs in only the bare necessities before racing to the car. As Jack apologizes, his voice thick with regret, the men in red suddenly burst in and drag Alice away. Jack's horrified cries echo as she's hauled off to the hospital for electroshock therapy. Lying in a sterile bed, her body aching from every jolt, Alice's eyes flutter open to the startled vision of that mysterious couple once more. Only now she realizes it's her and Jack, trapped in modern times, humming that maddening tune. Jack's just come home unemployed. Yet Alice cheerfully shrugs it off, promising she can pull extra shifts at the hospital where she works as a doctor. Sure enough, double shifts start to wear Alice down, and when she stumbles in late, Jack's no help. He skips making dinner and even gets offended when Alice is too exhausted to get intimate. That night, Jack retreats with his earbuds in, devouring Frank's podcast about how men must escape a stifling society to find their true selves. Before long, Alice jolts awake back in Victory's hospital ward. Dr. Collins declares she's fixed, and she's shipped back to town overnight, slipping seamlessly into her old routine as if nothing ever happened. Days drift by peacefully until one evening Jack returns humming that maddening tune. Only now Alice learns the truth. This Jack is the real, one who signed up for Victory's grand experiment, choosing a flawless life in exchange for tethering Alice to a mysterious simulation machine 24/7. Men plug in only during work hours and disconnect in the desert headquarters, then spend their off hours tending Alice's actual body and working gritty side jobs to rent the device. Suddenly, back inside Victory's picture-perfect streets, Alice collapses in agony as a flood of buried images crashes over her. She demands answers and Jack snaps defensively, insisting he did it for their happiness because their real life was miserable. Alice seethes at his betrayal. How could he steal her freedom and gaslight her into thinking she was mad? She's also terrified for the other wives and their children, but Jack coldly reminds her the kids aren't real. They're just pixels in the simulation. Kneeling at her feet, Jack begs for forgiveness, clutching her desperately and squeezing the breath from her lungs. But Alice's resolve snaps. She grabs a glass off the nearby table and brings it down hard on Jack's head, knocking him out as she finally fights back. Alice has no idea that a death in Victory means a real-life fatality. So when the real Jack's eyes flutter shut, Victory HQ buzzes Frank with the grim news. In a flash, Bunny bursts in, ears pricked at distant clamor, and covers Jack's lifeless form, shushing Alice into stunned silence as she tries to steady her trembling friend. Alice stammers every half-formed detail, but Bunny cuts in, her voice breaking, "I know. I chose the simulation to have my kids back after they died for real." She shoves a trembling Alice toward the door. "You have to disconnect at the headquarters. Jack can't do it for you anymore." Heart pounding, Alice stumbles into the street, neighbors emerging from their homes under the sputtering streetlights, each explosion echoing like an alarm. Women hush in dawning horror while the men fixate on Jack's body, shouting for answers and blocking Alice's path. Without hesitation, Bunny springs forward, shoving the men aside in a furious blur, granting Alice a frantic window to leap into a waiting car. The engine roars, tires screech, and she barrels away as men in red swarm the driveway, hot-wiring vehicles to give chase. The engine's roar echoes through the town as Alice tears away in a high-speed chase. She clears the streets without a scratch, until the desert road narrows and the men in red slam their cars against hers, sparks flying. Suddenly, Dr. Collins barrels in behind her, pedal to the metal, intent on trapping her, only for Alice to swerve at the last second and send Collins and his pursuers crashing into each other in a tangle of twisted steel. Back at home, Frank's phone blares the news of Collins's death on speaker, and Shelley freezes as she hears every word. While Frank barks frantic orders to regroup, Shelley steps forward with cold eyes and plunges a knife into Frank's side, whispering fiercely, "Now it's my turn." Alice races through the desert, the heat pounding against her as she steers toward the hill, until her car jerks to a halt on a sharp curve. It's stuck, but she's not. Without a second thought, Alice leaps out and sprints up the winding road, knowing the abandoned car might slow her pursuers. But it doesn't. The men in red are right behind her, scrambling up the hill on foot. Alice's lungs burn, her legs scream, but she pushes harder, refusing to quit until she reaches the top, where the glowing dome stands, waiting. Suddenly, Jack appears in front of her, arms open, pleading softly for her to stay. A wave of memories floods her mind, laughs, tears, the life they once had. But then come the footsteps. The men in red are closing in. Alice shakes off the illusion, races forward, slams her hands against the dome's wall, and as her head snaps back, the visions hit. Chaos, reality, truth, then darkness, and a gasp.